Hey, my name is Billy Birch. I'm part of the pastoral leadership team at Christ Community Church. I have with me Todd Madonna, friend who is the area director of Chester County Young Life. And we had the privilege of talking about what it means to serve our neighbors. And you've seen the prior videos that are talking about pray, eat, love. We're talking about the love portion of this whole video series, and we're excited to do that. And it's amazing, Todd, that Jesus tells us in Matthew 22 what the greatest commandment is: love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, strength, and mind. Then right after that says, and this, love your neighbor as yourself.
Yeah.
That's a huge challenge to us. I mean, the two work together. The two, love God, love your neighbor. 1 John says you can't love your neighbor unless you love God. You can't love God unless you love your neighbor. And it all just is intertwined and all comes together,
And it's interesting that the Gospels record so many stories where Jesus is illustrating that. He even tells us the parable of the Good Samaritan and kind of tells the story of what it looks like to love your neighbor or to serve your neighbor, like we're talking about today.
That's right. And that passage is not asking the question, who will be my neighbor? It's really telling us that we need to establish ourselves, no matter where we are, as the good neighbor to everybody around us, no matter if it's in your neighborhood, schools, jobs, no matter what, and I think that's a real critical piece. And something that has been real helpful to me through the years in talking about how I can be a good neighbor, how I can live that out, live that commandment that Jesus tells us to live that out, is I have three things I keep in my mind. They're pray, look, do. Ask God, look around, and do it. Basically just meaning, God, use me today somehow.
Yeah.
You use me in some way, shape, or form. Then I got to do the work of, let me just look around, because there's going to be an opportunity, that I can love and serve.
Yeah.
And then the last part is just, all right, just walk over and do it, no matter whether it's uncomfortable or not.
Yeah, I love those. I love that description, those three things, Billy. And I liked how you said, today. Who am I going to love today? Because I think sometimes we get overwhelmed just, trying to think, through just in general, how can I love others? And he says focus on today. Who can I serve today? But I like the idea of it starting with prayer, because it reminds us that loving others, being a good neighbor, it starts with your relationship with Christ.
Yeah, it does.
It starts with being reminded that Christ loved you first.
Right.
That we have so much to offer because of what Christ has offered us.
Right, and Christ served us even when we didn't deserve it. I mean, that's
because if that's not the
point.
starting point, and I'm guilty of this, if that's not the starting point, we're all selfish people, but we can go out and serve people and do things, do good things and check the box in many ways, but it starts with a wrong motive.
Just the other day with the snow and the ice, there was a car that was in a ditch, and they obviously needed help. They weren't getting out of that ditch without somebody helping, and so a bunch of the people had gotten out of their cars to help, and we pushed her out of the ditch, right? That's just one example of, we just have to be looking around and just seeing what's out there and what has God put in front of it. I have been placed here for a certain time. That's something simple. I know that there have been neighbors who have brought us meals over when we've had babies or when a death in the family or something like that. I know that we have learned from that example and tried to do the same thing to our neighbors. We have volunteered at countless different organizations, and that's even something really, really a lot of fun for the family. But it's just taking a look and looking at our schedule and looking at our time and saying, okay, God, you want to use me? Then use me. Help me to look around. Help me to see what's out there.
Absolutely.
It's not one system for everybody, but the one thing that is for everybody is you got to pray and say, God, use me. Then you got to look around, and God is going to provide that.
Yeah.
Then we have to do it.
I love the emphasis on the word look. I think every day, as we're trying to orient our day around Christ, it impacts the way we look at things. We tell kids, when you're in the lunchroom, are you looking around for opportunities? Yeah. And I don't know how many times I've heard stories of a kid just saying, I just saw a kid that was eating lunch by himself,
Right.
and seemed like he needed a friend, and
right.
sometimes we just tell kids like the opportunity to love your neighbor or serve is just the distance between your lunch table, and that one kid that's sitting alone, his lunch table. But do you see it? It's interesting. So many times you see it, when Jesus saw the crowds, when he saw someone in need, and a lot of times the opportunity to serve, you're hindered just simply because you don't see it. You're not looking for the opportunity. Just a few weeks ago, we were looking out our window, up at the bus stop, and there was a woman that's studying at Westchester University from China, and she was there at the bus stop with her little girl, and she didn't know that there was a 2-hour delay, and so they were standing at the bus stop by themselves, and it was first we had to see them. But then my wife needed to remind me that we probably should do something. And, but it started with seeing and recognizing there's an opportunity, and then leaving the house and walking up and looking for an opportunity to serve someone. And,
That's great.
It's just interesting what that opportunity turned into a relationship.
Yeah.
And that relationship turned into a dinner.
Yeah.
And with people that were totally different than us. People that were totally different, and sometimes it's hard to serve people that are really different. These people were super different. They didn't even speak our language. But they, it started, like you said, with looking and for an opportunity. And God has a funny way of then leading you to the opportunity of what you should do.
Absolutely. And sometimes it's just setting back, looking at our calendar, and then planning sometimes to serve and be a good neighbor, or saying, "Well, let's have them over this night," or let's have or these spontaneous things, and making sure that we plan those. But we do have to not only look, but we actually have to do. Which I love that you guys actually did that.
Yeah.
Because how many times do we kind of look at these opportunities and see them, but kind of just go by?
Yeah.
And God is going to do something through us when we make ourselves available for serving, and it will turn into a relationship.
Absolutely.
More often than not.
Absolutely. I mean, compassion always is you see, but compassion, the idea of that is when you see, you actually act on what you see. Does your heart, your heart affect your feet?
Yeah.
And, so it kind of goes from what you see,
that's
does it
a good way
affect
to
your
look at
heart,
it.
and then does it affect your feet to what you do?
Yeah.
And all those things matter. But it is amazing, Billy, what God does when we choose to serve our neighbor. Serving always leads to an opportunity. Often, most of the time, it leads to an opportunity to share.
Hey, if I could just challenge the audience with one thing, it is to take your life and put those 3 things in it. Pray, look, and do. Pray and ask God for an opportunity. Ask Him to use you every day. And then look around. And it's amazing how God is going to show you how you can serve and how you can be a good neighbor. And then it's just do it. And people often ask me, what's the purpose of my life? And how can I, the purpose of your life is that you pray and let God use you for something He wants to use you for. He's going to put you in that place. And that is not only a purposeful life, but that is a very powerful life.
That's well said, Billy. And I think just to be reminded that to love God with all of your heart is to love others and to serve others. And to every day pray the prayer, Lord, let my eyes, what I see today, let them affect my heart. And as my heart is affected, give me the courage and the strength to go and do. Jesus said, go and do likewise. Love and serve your neighbor.